Hello and welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Lauren, and today I am looking at a tasting history video. A couple of people have asked for it again, so I'm like, okay, sure. So today we're going to be making medieval mead, just because back to my roots as Bartender reacts. Whenever I have an opportunity to react to something alcohol-based, I take it. Alec is not here to make fun of me for that anymore. He left. Ha! If you watch any of our Shikanime videos together, me and Alec, he makes fun of me for being a bit of a lush sometimes, but whatever, we forgive him. But anyway, today we're learning how to make mead like a Viking. Ow, I got caught. So yeah, without further ado, let us begin.
The term honeymoon comes from?
No.
You ever wonder where the term honeymoon comes from?
I'm
about
not
to tell
until
you.
now.
See, in the Middle Ages, when a young couple got married, their family would give them a moon or a month's worth of honey mead. And then the young couple would go off, frolic, and make merry for a few weeks, and hopefully come back with a bun in the oven. So that's what we're making today.
Okay.
Not a baby. Mead. So whether you're a Saxon warrior positioned in your shield wall, or a marauding Norse Viking.
You got Beedrill next to it? Okay, sorry, I just discovered the Beedrill. I like it, it's cute. Anyway, sorry, got distracted by the Pokemon.
Ready for that sweet, sweet...
Let's see here, one moment. Now I've got one too. There's a little too much green in him apparently, but he's gonna watch with me. I just can't really, I can put him, he can watch through the thing. he's back there.
Taste of alcoholic honey, mead. This time,
I love alcoholic
tasting
honey.
history. So a bunch of people have been asking me to make merch, or merchandise. So there is some that I just got up in the bar beneath this video. But you know what? I would love some ideas about what kind of stuff you guys want, what I should have made, because I'm not very good at that kind of stuff. Anyway, merch below, more to come. So today's recipe comes from the 13th century Tractus manuscript, Folio 20R. Catchy title. Now usually I read the full recipe, but this recipe is rather long and rather wordy, so I'm just going to give you the hits, but I am going to put the full translation in the description if you care to read the entire thing.
And make it
For to make mead, take 1 gallon of fine honey, and to that 4 gallons of water, and heat that water till it be as lang. Then dissolve the honey in the water. Then set them over the fire and let them boil, and ever scum it as long as any filth riseth thereon. And then take it down off the fire and let it cool in another vessel till it be as cold as milk when it cometh from the cow. Then take dregs of the finest ale.
So how cold is milk when it cometh from the cow? Medium warm, probably, because like it's no longer boiling, so it's still warm though. All right.
Barm and cast it into the water and the honey. And
I've only attempted to milk a cow one time, and I was not good at it. Did not manage to milk that thing. I felt very bad for the cow, but also I was terrified I was gonna like rip its udders off because it's like you have to push and pull. They have to pull and squeeze really hard. At least it felt really hard to my 9-year-old fingers.
Stir all well together, and so let it stand 3 days and nights.
Okay.
Then draw it from the dregs as clear as thou may into another vessel clean, and let it stand 1 night or 2, and then draw it into another vessel and serve it forth.
Okay.
So anyone who makes mead on the regular
5 days.
today is probably thinking, oh, that just doesn't really sound right to me. Because mead usually ferments for weeks, not days, and then ages for months, not a couple nights. So this is a quick mead.
Yeah, for sure. 5-minute crafts of mead.
They would have let it age longer if need be. I don't know. This mead is probably going to be not as alcoholic, very sweet and cloudy, but we shall see. Now the recipe also gives us
It says clear as you can get it though, so I don't know. I've really only ever had mead at like Ren fairs, and then we like sold one briefly at a restaurant I worked at. We sold glug and we sold mead for a winter time, but then again, it's Chicago. Mostly we sell glug.
Instructions on how to make this mead eaglin by adding various herbs such as hyssop, betony, moonwort, hart's tongue, and white horehound, just to name a few. Kind of sounds like the 3 Weird sisters at the beginning of Macbeth.
Oh yeah.
Now,
well, no. Not at the beginning. It's sort of in the middle. The double, double, toil and trouble. Fire burn and cauldron bubble. That's like in Act 4. Act 3. I'm trying to remember because I was in that show and I had to be kind of like under the stage for all of Act 4. So I think it was in Act 4 or 5 because like we had to help with that. And that was like the double, double, toil and trouble was like a little later. No. It wasn't at the beginning. When was it? Okay, I looked it up. Beginning of Act 4. I was like, I knew it was in the act. I was like, it's not at the beginning. I was like, when exactly is it? I was right even about it being Act 4. Ha! Ha ha! Anyway, that's my theater nerd coming out, being like, wait a minute, no. Because I had to help them. Like, I was like under the stage and I had to like, as they like drop stuff in, we had to like be ready to catch certain things. Because like they had the cauldron out on the this extension to the stage we'd built out, so we had a trap door that I would come out of at one point. And so it's like they were dropping stuff into the cauldron, and then we could also raise stuff up out of the cauldron too. And it was pretty cool, especially for like a high school production. Anyway, none of that's really relevant, but like I know what he's talking about because like the double double toil and trouble monologue or like chant is eye of Newton, toe of frog, like all of that stuff, which is, eye of Newt is mustard seed, so it's like all of these things, these plants had these weird sounding names. So that's what he was referencing, but not at the beginning. At the beginning, they're not talking about that. They're talking about Mackers at the beginning.
Iglin is a shortened version of the word Medigters at the beginning of Macbeth.
Not at the beginning.
Now, Iglin is a shortened version of the word Meidiglin, meaning healing mead, because in medieval recipes, usually when there were herbs added, it was medicinal, because that was the medicine that was most commonly available. And even today, any mead that is made with herbs and spices is called a mythiglin, very similar to Meidiglin. There are actually dozens of terms for all different kinds of mead depending on what you're adding into it and how alcoholic or how much honey is in it. There are tons. And I'm not going to go into them all right now, but there are some great resources, books, in the video description if you really want to kind of get into mead and how to make all the different various forms. But for today, we're sticking with the traditional 3 ingredients: water. Don't use distilled water for this. Mineral or spring water, that's the way to go.
Cool.
Honey, and ale dregs or dried ale yeast. So the recipe calls for 4 gallons of water and 1 gallon of honey, but that's a lot. So
that is a lot.
I'm making 1 gallon of water and a quart of honey. And really, as long as you stay with the 4-to-1 ratio, you're going to be good to go. Cool. Now, as for the yeast, if you can get ale barm or dregs, fantastic. But if not, you can go ahead and use dry yeast. The thing is, in either case, they didn't tell you how much to use, and it's really going to depend on how active the yeast is. So you're kind of just guessing. What I ended up doing was about 2 tablespoons of barm, and then I put it into a little bit of water with a drop of honey just to make sure that it was active, and
Smart.
it was. If you're using dried yeast, it's hard to say. Usually for a gallon you would use like a pinch, but because we're only doing this for 3 days, fermenting it for 3 days, I'd use a little bit more, maybe like a third of a packet.
Good idea.
Maybe.
I don't know.
So first, if you're worried about bacteria, you can go...
I mean, I've never made bread or anything. My roommate makes bread a lot, but I don't know. I've never tried really using yeast to my knowledge. I think I must have because I've made pizza. Like I've made like pizza dough from scratch and like made pizza before. And like, the dough has to rise, but I don't remember because I was like probably 12 or 13 the last time I did that. So I don't remember. I don't know.
Go ahead and sterilize all of the tools that we're going to be using, though in the 13th century they wouldn't have really cared, though they
didn't know about
kind
it.
of have a way around that, so
Oh.
we'll get to that.
They didn't know about pasteurization and bacteria
it
and
can't hurt
germs
to sterilize your equipment. So what you'll need is a large pot for boiling, a large container for fermenting, another container for aging for all of 2 nights, and preferably like a bottle with a small opening so you can fit a bubbler or airlock.
Ooh.
That lets the carbonation out without other things getting in.
But
And then
did
you
they
can also
have
probably
that?
use a siphon or a funnel depending on how you plan on getting the mead from one container to the next. Siphon or funnel will definitely make things easier. So following the recipe, we
Okay.
heat our water until it is lang. Now, I could not find
Lang?
anywhere a translation, Middle English, Old English, anything
course.
for the word lang. So if anyone knows, great. Otherwise, it really probably just means rather hot, because what you want to be doing is to dissolve the honey in there so it's not just falling to the bottom.
Okay.
So add the honey and give it a mix until it's dissolved. Then boil the honey and water mixture called must. Now, a lot of
Okay.
modern mead makers
It is funny though, like things like using lang, because I've definitely talked about this before, about how like we write down recipes and stuff, but we don't clarify the things that are obvious. So, you know, the one example I've seen before is like we use you're making a cake, you use 2 eggs or whatever, but we don't specify the kind of egg. So in 1,000 years and 800 years, will people know that we mean chicken eggs? You know, like how much does language change? How much is it going to change that like things that we think are obvious really aren't anymore? And like you can even see that kind of thing happening in real time, just with like various slang terms that people from the 40s would use that we don't use anymore, or we use them in a really different way, or like things that probably if you picked out like 3 random Gen Xers, they wouldn't necessarily know what Riz is, like there's the language changes so fast, and like we don't write it down and like specifics. I just think it's interesting how quickly things can change. So anyway, everyone knew what lang was. Now we don't know. That's so interesting.
not boil it at this point, but I think that's part of the way that they got rid of the bacteria that might have been in the water in the Middle Ages.
They didn't know about the
You boil
bacteria,
it,
though.
It'll get rid of most of the bacteria. Also, this thing is going to have alcohol and a ton of honey in it, so there's not going to be a lot left alive no matter what. So
Right.
it's probably pretty safe. As it boils, skim off any scum that forms at the top. Though you really shouldn't have that much scum unless you're using honey directly from honeycomb,
Which they might have
because that
been.
can have dirt or pieces of wax in it, and that's really what's going to be bubbling up to the top. Once boiled, take
Cool.
it off the fire and pour it into the second vessel. Hopefully doing a better
Spilling a
job
lot.
than I did, because I spilled a bunch and it got really, really sticky for like days afterward.
Oh,
I
yeah, for
couldn't
sure.
get it to non-sticky. Then you gotta let that honey and water
That's
mixture
hard.
cool until it is the temperature of milk when it comes out of a cow, about 98 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. If you put yeast in there before it gets about to that, it could kill the yeast. So just wait. It can
Cool
take
down
a
a
while,
little bit.
but just wait. Then pour in your dregs or barm or yeast, then cover the top, not airtight, and leave it be out of direct sunlight. You can even
Okay.
put it like in a closet.
Cool.
Now by the next day, the mead
Cool.
should be in what I call
It looks pretty nasty though, so you want to be careful. you got a girl coming over. She wakes up, goes into your closet when she's snooping, and she sees you. She sees your closet of mead, your closet mead. Oh God, oh, she's gonna think that's piss. Too many of us saw those episodes of like on like MTV where it was like the girls would like look inside the guys' rooms or whatever, and like it was like, do you want to date this person who has the best room? Like, who are you gonna date? I don't remember exactly what the show was called, but there was more than one guy who just had like a bottle of piss in his room. So, there were a couple of incidents on the MTV that told us that was a possibility. So, also, actually, and to be fair, maybe not just men, I knew a girl, and like She also pissed in cups in her bedroom. Like, the way that their house was, like, the bedrooms were, was, like, her bedroom, her sister's bedroom, and they were, like, right next, they were, they both, like, shared the attic, essentially. So there was, like, door between the bedrooms, but, like, in order to go, she would have to go through her sister's room to go down the stairs in order to get to the bathroom, so she just didn't. But she also didn't, like, dump that shit. We found out later that that girl was kind of going through it, though. Anyway, not giving any names, giving nothing else. That's all I'm telling you. But to be fair, maybe not just men have a piss in their closet. I don't know. We're going to stop this conversation.
The Don Ho phase of mead making, because you'll see tiny bubbles starting to rise to the top. Oh, sometimes I hate myself.
Me too, actually. I just spent like 10 minutes talking about piss. Mine was worse.
But I don't care.
I do.
Makes
Shouldn't
me
have
laugh.
said all that. I can't believe I'm
After
putting that on the
leaving it
internet.
For longer than 3 days, it would actually start to get clear in this beautiful golden colored mead that we know and love so well. But in 3 days, that ain't gonna happen. So after 3 days, go ahead and transfer it, trying not to get too much of the yeast at the bottom to that next container or bottle. Then stick a bubbler in it and let it sit for a couple more nights. Now I'm actually making 2 little bottles out of this
Would they
gallon.
have had the bubbler,
One
though?
that I'm going to try, in 2 nights, and then one that I'm going to hold on to for maybe 6 months or so. I want to see how the flavor changes. It's not going to have any more fermentation time from that first fermenting, but the aging hopefully might mellow out the flavor.
Maybe he should have done 3
I
just
don't
to
know.
see.
We'll see. So what inspired me to make mead today was actually because of a video game that's coming out today, or the day that this video will air, called Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Not associated with them in any way, but I'm still super excited because it's like a history-based game of like my favorite time period, Saxons and Vikings, fighting it out. So I'm assuming that there's gonna be mead in there somewhere.
There better be.
When you think of, Saxons and Vikings, yes, you think of mead, but mead actually got its start way before that.
Right. Now it's history time. Okay, we spent so long talking
actually
about
comes from pottery found in northern China, dating from about 7,000 BC.
Wow.
There was residue from
Wow.
and the compounds associated with fermentation. And there are mentions of alcoholic drinks made with honey throughout Chinese literature, including the Song of Mead by Su Shi in the 11th century. In Central Europe, similar residues have been found in the pottery of the Bell Beaker culture, which roamed Bronze Age Europe more than 4,000 years ago.
Wow.
But the earliest written mention of mead actually comes from the ancient Indian Rig Veda, which says, "I have tasted the sweet drink of life, knowing that it inspires good thoughts and joyous expansiveness to the extreme, that all the gods and all mortals seek it together, calling it mead. High praise indeed for this our mead." Now, the drink that they're talking about in the Rig Veda is actually known as soma, which is a honey drink that probably also had some hallucinogens or something in it because it would give visions of the gods. So hopefully not what I'm making today. And while this is the first mention that we have of mead being associated with the gods, it is far from the last. The Minoan culture produced mead and credited it to their mother goddess Potnia, whose priestesses were named Melissa, meaning bee. The love that the Minoans had for this drink passed on to the other Greek civilizations. They also used these same Melissae as priestesses for Artemis and Demeter, and the drink eventually made its way to the Roman Empire. Columella gives us a recipe in De Re Rustica, as does Pliny the Elder in Naturalis Historia. There is a wine also made solely of honey and water. For this purpose, it is recommended that rainwater should be kept for a period of 5 years. This beverage is known as hydromeli, and with age acquires the flavor of wine. It is nowhere more highly esteemed.
That kid should not have been, like, fucking with the bees when he's naked. That was just silly. I like that his mom is definitely being like, hey, where's your beekeeping suit, you idiot?
Than in Phrygia. Now, aren't you glad I said to use spring water rather than make you go get rainwater and wait 5 years? You're welcome.
Thank you.
Now, after the fall of Rome, our mead journey takes us north to Britannia, or Britain. In one Welsh poem from around 550 AD called Canu i Mead, we hear of that iconic drinking vessel for mead, the mead horn.
Ooh, look at him
May
go.
Maelgwn of Mona be affected with mead, and affect us from the foaming mead horns with the choicest pure liquor, which the bees collect and do not enjoy.
Stupid bees. They collect it, but they don't even know what they got. Just throwing shade at bees.
Mead distilled sparkling, its praise is everywhere. So the mead in that poem is sparkling, which is interesting because based on what I've seen with our mead, ours is also going to be sparkling. In another Welsh poem, Y Gododdin, we hear the story of a battle where those fighting were rather hungover from too much mead. Men went to Catraeth at morning, their high spirits lessened their lifespan. They drank mead, golden sweet and snaring. For a year the minstrels were merry. Their high spirits lessened their lifespan. How Welsh. Anyway, I wanted to actually thank a
Shade at the
Welshman,
Welsh!
the Welsh Viking here
The Welsh throwing shade at the bees, and then this guy throwing shade at the Welsh.
on YouTube named Jim for helping me with a bunch of the research and the pronunciation, as well as letting me know that the Welsh word for drunk is methwi, which literally means meaded. I love that. Now, at about the same time that these Welshmen were lessening their lifespan with mead, the Irish were drinking it too just across the water on the hill of Tara, where the banquet hall was known as Cech Mithorda.
I like that the banquet hall has a little bit of a list to it, because the building's a little drunk too.
The mead circling house, which I can only imagine is rather similar to Hrothgar's mead hall, Hjorut in Beowulf, where Grendel would rip apart drunken Danes. They would willingly wait on their wassailing benches, a grapple with Grendel with grimmest of edges. Then this mead hall at morning with murder was reeking. The building was bloody at breaking of daylight.
So Grendel is not a big party fan, huh? Grendel's a member of the temperance movement.
The bench deals all flooded, dripping and bloodied. Now let us pause right there while I beseech thee, if you have never read Beowulf, or if you only read it under duress in high school or college, go get a copy because it is so great and it's super quick to read. It's not very long. I'm going to put my favorite translation in the description, but really any translation works. Don't watch the movie, but
But not the media translation. No visual media. My high school, we didn't really read a lot of Beowulf in high school. We read some passages of it, but my my English teacher in high school could read and speak the Old English that Beowulf was written in, which was really cool. So and he would translate other stuff too. So you could give him a passage of something else and he would translate it into Old English and speak it out loud. It was really cool that that was one of his little party tricks for early in the year, because Beowulf was the first thing we watched or did anything with. But he could speak it, he could read it, he knew what a lot of these words meant. I'm just oh, cool. Thanks, Mr. Pro.
It's fantastic. And whoever wrote it, we don't know, but whoever wrote it really was the greatest of poets, or skalds, and must have gotten that from Odin, because Odin made good skalds. And that brings us to Norse mythology. Following a war between two factions of the Norse gods, they decided to call a truce in the same way that we do today by spitting into a giant cauldron.
Yep, that's how we do it.
Out of this godly saliva rose a creature, a man, god, not really specific, named Kvasir, and he was all-knowing. He was the most brilliant poet and had all of the knowledge that there was to be had.
Okay.
Even the gods would ask him questions that they needed to know. Well, when Kvasir wasn't busy, he liked to go down to Midgard, where the humans lived, and pass on some of his knowledge.
Good nice of Kizar. Thank you.
One day he came across two dwarves named Fjalar and Galar, who said, "Come on in, we'll make you some mead." And that's what they proceeded to do. They made him some mead. They slit him open with knives and drained his blood into 3 vats, then added honey to it to create mead. How
The
dark.
dwarves are always horrible in Norse
That
mythology,
mead
aren't
supposedly gave some of his power if you drank it, so it was called the mead of poetry. But old Kvasir was, of course, missed by the gods, who were like, "Hey, dwarves, where's our smart guy?" And the dwarves were like, "Oh no, you know what? He came over and he was so smart that he choked on his own knowledge and died." and they believed him.
Well, I believe that. These are the same gods who who believed Loki every time he said, "Didn't do it, wasn't me." You know? They also were the ones who, like, every time they got into trouble and got Loki to get them out of the trouble again, they would just blame him for that too. Loki did screw with them a little bit. A lot. He screwed with them a lot, okay? But not every single time. And then he always fixed it. I'm a Loki apologist. I've always been a Loki apologist. Even before I watched Thor or before the MCU, like, I've always been a Loki apologist ever since the beginning. I went through, like, a big mythology phase. Greek and Norse mythology were my mythologies of choice. But anyway, my point being, the Norse gods weren't very smart. And I mean, there's a lot of people in Norse mythology weren't very smart. I mean, those the giants also were, like, believed that Thor was a woman for a while, and all they did was put a dress on him and cover his face with a veil. Loki, at least, you know, zhuzhed up a little bit. Norse mythology wasn't necessarily really about the smarts. It was more about the rah, you know.
Well, these two jerk dwarves weren't done with their little killing spree, because a little while later they killed a couple, a husband and wife, who were giants. And the giant's son was like, no. So he came over and took the dwarves and set them on an island that was about to flood so they would die. But the dwarves were like, hey, if you don't kill us, you can have this mead of poetry.
How about I kill you and then take it anyway?
The giant was like, okay, and let them go. And now their part of the story is completely done. It's kind of weird. But the giant didn't drink the mead himself. He actually just kind of hoarded it and gave it to somebody else to protect. And when Odin, played by Anthony Hopkins, found out, he decided, I need this mead of poetry, because Odin prided himself on his love of knowledge and poetry. Anyway, after a bunch of scheming and shape-shifting, Odin was allowed to have 3 sips, 1 from each vat of the mead. But joke's on them, because an Odin sip is like the sip that I'm going to take if you offer me a drink of your cocktail. He drained it dry, all 3 vats in 3 little sips, or huge sips, I guess. Then he turned into an eagle, and with the Steve Miller Band playing behind him, flew home to Asgard and regurgitated the mead into his own 3 containers. But he dropped a few drops down to Midgard, where the humans live.
Thanks.
And those drops are said to be the beginning of all mediocre poetry in the world.
Mediocre?
To be a great poet or skald, you have to get your mead directly from Odin himself. And I'm pretty sure that whoever wrote Beowulf got their mead directly from Odin himself.
Okay, that was a long tangent. I didn't just make that up, right? It was mediocre, right? That was the joke. He didn't dwell on that. I don't know.
Now, the mead that I'm making today, I'm not going to guess is going to make me into a great poet, but maybe if you drink enough of it and you kind of get a little chatty, you'll think you're a great poet, because that has definitely happened to me in the past with mead. Anyway, let's give it a shot. So once 2 nights have passed, pour the mead into that final clean vessel, and it's ready to drink. Oh dear. Oh, no. Okay. Well, that was embarrassing. My ale horn seems to be leaking. That's not good. Nobody likes to leak the ale horn. So instead, I'm using a beer mug. That's okay. So let's go ahead and try this mead. It smells very yeasty.
Great.
Which I guess is to be expected.
He's kind of doing that kombucha girl face.
You know what? It's not as... When I poured it, it was effervescent, but when you drink it, you don't really get it. It's pretty flat. There's definitely some alcohol in there, though I don't know how much, because I didn't... You can find out. There are ways you can test it and everything.
Fun.
I didn't do it. Definitely alcoholic, though. And definitely super sweet. I think it would mellow if I gave it some more time.
All right, so we
which
will.
I'm going to do. Obviously not fermenting, but I am going to leave it in that second bottle maybe 6 months. Maybe in 6 months we do another episode on something else, and I drink the rest of the mead, and we see how it goes. Anyway,
damn.
Go make yourself some mead. It's actually not that hard. Just take some time, and enjoy life, and enjoy poetry. And I will see you next time on Tasting History.
Fun. I do like poetry. I like one of my favorite poets, Christina Rossetti. She wrote The Goblin Market. We must not talk of goblin men. So she wrote some cool stuff. This was 4 years ago. Did he ever tell us how the mead went? Was there a part 2? Oh, 6-month tasting. Open link in new tab. Okay, so there is a part 2, Dragonheart for a Viking king. Brum, brum, brum. So I guess I'll do that at some other point. Go ahead, let me know if you want to see this part 2, because that sounds kind of fun. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.